Welcome in Off the Hook Sports. I'm your host, Caleb Calhoun. It is officially football season. Week 0 has happened. Who is excited? I know I am. The main week 1 starts this week, and it's one of the best week 1s we have seen in a while with 3 top 10 matchups. Obviously, then Tennessee opening the season against Syracuse. I was off Friday, so we've got a lot to recap over the last 4 days since I've been off. We're going to talk first about Tennessee. What are reasonable expectations for the Vols this year? Because they're intriguing. Adding to that and building on that, the ESPN FPI rankings have taken a step further and are now projecting what Tennessee's record will be. We'll discuss what makes the most sense based on that record. We're going to get when I was off, of course, all the big news happens when I'm off, right? The SEC goes to a 9-game schedule, and Kamari Blair flips from South Carolina to UT. We're going to talk about both of those. Plus, we're going to discuss, and this is a big one, we're going to discuss the SEC going to 9 games without actually, as far as we know, any reported concessions from ESPN. I think that's kind of the big story of that. I'm going to have to give my take on that because I got a lot of criticism of Greg Sankey doing that, and it's something I've been feeling about for a while for those of you guys who know me and Greg Sankey's negotiations with the SEC. So I will get on to that. I have some, believe it or not, big problems with the 9-game schedule and the way it has worked out, and I'm going to talk about it. So hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications, tell a friend. Building something great here at All Dog Sports wants you to be a part of it. We are represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealers. Let's get rolling with today's tough question. And it's a pretty simple one. And it is this. Is it a reasonable expectation for Tennessee football to get back to the college football playoff again this year? I asked that question because of everything that has gone on with the Vols this offseason. As Tennessee gets set to start a new season on Saturday, when they open the year against Syracuse, the Vols will obviously face the Orange. They replaced their quarterback. They lost last year in the playoff 42-17 in the first round, not looking like they belonged. Then they lost their quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. That's one of 9 starters they have to replace on offense. Their defense lost its best player to the pros, James Pierce Jr. The best player on the team this year, the most highly touted pro prospect this year, Jamal McCoy, is starting the season hurt. He will play, but he's banged up. With all of that in mind, is it reasonable to expect Tennessee to get back to the college football playoff? And that is the question. That is today's tough question. You guys vote on the poll question now. Is the college football playoff still a reasonable goal for the Vols this year? Yes or no? Let me give you, I just gave you the backstory on why it's going to work against Tennessee. Plus, finally, their schedule's harder this year. Syracuse is a tougher non-conference foe than NC State. Although they do get Georgia at home, they get Alabama and Florida on the road. Those are always their 3 marquee games, and Georgia's always the toughest one. So you don't really want them at home if your goal is to get a path to 10-2. So now their path looks like more like it's going to be 9-3, which would not get them to the playoff. We'll talk about that later. But with all that in mind, is a college football playoff appearance a reasonable expectation for Tennessee? Let me explain the reasons why there are things working in their favor, despite all this. They do have a lot of youth. Josh Heupel's recruiting will finally be tested as for the first time since he's been at Tennessee, a majority of players on this roster in the rotation playing this year will be players that he signed out of high school to Tennessee. That'll be the first time that's happened since he's been at Tennessee. There's a lot of real talent despite all of the departures. The receiving core, for instance, should be better. Mike Matthews, Chris Brazel, and Braylon Staley should be better as a trio than Brew McCoy, who was not healthy last year, Dante Thornton, who was not healthy last year, and Squirrel White, who was not healthy last year. Chris Brazel actually has some experience returning. So despite the lack of experience at receiver, they should be better. The tackles should be better with Lance Hurd back. David Sanders Jr., indeed a true freshman, but Sanders and Hurd more experience in the system, and both of them actually fully healthy, unlike last year when Hurd and John Campbell Jr. played hurt at the beginning of the year. The quarterback situation while not as good as it would have been, I think, with Nico Iamaleava back this year, should be better with Joey Aguilar than it was last year with Nico Iamaleava. The interior offensive line worse. The running backs as a unit may be better, but nobody on Dylan Sampson's level. But you see, I'm going back and forth with why the offense could be better. It's actually more 50-50. Special teams comes down to a long snapper because because Bennett Brady's a new long snapper. But Jackson Ross and Max Gilbert are both back. Defense, Arian Carter, Jeremiah Thielander, linebacker should be significantly better. Secondary should be worse at the start of the year, but significantly better by the second quarter of the year. Defensive line will be worse. Edge rushers expected to be worse. So you're about 50-50 on each side, and it comes down to your schedule. With that in mind, with the possibility that they actually could be better at a lot of these positions, I'm going to say yes, a college football playoff appearance is a reasonable expectation for the Vols. Now, that does not mean it's likely. That does not mean a return to the playoff is likely. But it does mean that it's reasonable for them to shoot for that this year, once again, given who they have returning, because their path to the college football playoff is beating Georgia at home and then running the table against all the teams they're favored to beat. And they should be able to beat everybody else. We always talk about who's their big upset game because, like last year, Arkansas was their big upset game. Could they drop one of those this year? Well, they have to be road games against unranked teams. Two of the road games we just brought up are Florida and Alabama. So it would have to be at Mississippi State or at Kentucky. Mississippi State is the most dangerous one. And I've talked to you guys about that. Kentucky on the road, Tennessee always beats Kentucky no matter what. They're going to take them seriously, or they won't, but Kentucky just won't be able to beat them because Kentucky will make mistake after mistake. So with that in mind, with the fact that if they beat Georgia, 10-2 is likely on the table and 10-2 will get them into the playoff, I am of the mindset that yes, a college football playoff appearance is a reasonable expectation for the Vols this year. Does not mean it'll happen. Does not mean it's likely to happen. But it is certainly reasonable to expect it to happen for Tennessee. And it's certainly reasonable for Tennessee fans to hope that happens. Is it a disappointment if they don't make the playoff? Some might see it that way. I'll say this. Tennessee's not at the level yet where back during the BCS days where it was a disappointment if they didn't win an SEC championship early BCS days or compete for the national title. But they are in a 12-team playoff. I think it is a reasonable expectation to make the playoff this year, even if I think there's a slightly less than 50% chance that they will actually do it. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, white settle. Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
The poll question up is the college football playoff still a reasonable goal for the Vols this year? You guys seem to agree with me. A 78% say yes, 22% say no. That's pretty impressive, actually. 78% say yes, 22% say no. I'm with the 78%. I think it's a reasonable goal. Now, again, do they have a greater than 50% chance of making the college football playoff? I don't know. That's a much greater debate. That one's kind of hard to figure out. I would say it's hard for me to say they have a greater than 50% chance. I would probably set their chance at roughly 40%. I'd give them a 40% chance to make the college football playoff. Remember, if last year is any indication, given the conferences, and we saw what happened with Alabama and those teams, if last year's any indication given the conference, you need to be a top 10 team to get into the playoff. The top 10 got in. Alabama just missed it at 11 because Arizona State had to get an automatic bid and Clemson had to get an automatic bid, meaning Alabama and Miami just missed it at 11 and 13 because of those two automatic bids. So top 10 is where you need to be. We talked about this last week. While the polls don't have Tennessee as a top 10 team, the advanced metrics have them ranging anywhere from 8 to 13. So they're right there, guys. They're right there. That means it is very reasonable to expect them to make the college football playoff. They are probably the hardest team to predict this year. I think Texas is pretty hard to predict. I think Texas is vastly overrated given what everybody's saying about them. But at the same time, I do believe in Arch Manning long as a player. So I do think in general that Texas can still be elite because of that. It is still debatable, though. All this in mind, how far Tennessee can go. I think a top 25 finish is almost certain this year. I'd be shocked if they don't have that. But a playoff, while not likely, is a reasonable expectation. And I think that's the best way to approach this. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. It is time for Ford Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford. Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. And Ford Downs involves the ESPN FPI. We talked about it last week. The FPI has Tennessee as the 8th ranked team in the country, which is nice for the Vols, one of the better ones for them. The FPI also has the ESPN FPI, while ranking Tennessee at number 8 in the nation for its final 2025 preview, came out with the projections for every Tennessee football game this year on their schedule. Spoiler alert, Tennessee is expected to go 9-3. However, the good news for the Vols, believe it or not, the 3 games that they're projected to lose are their 3 biggest toss-up games. What do I mean by that? Based on FPI projections, every projected win, they're more likely to win those games than they are to lose any of their projected losses. That's a really good stat and a really good sign for Tennessee. Basically, if you project them at 9-3, but they're either going to lose a game that they're not supposed to lose or win a game that they're not supposed to win, it's more likely that they win a game that they're not supposed to win. So 10-2 looks more likely than 8-4. We're going to go to those 3 toss-up games. They're not going to shock you which ones they are. And it is 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. And I am first going to give my Cooper Mays impression to the chagrin of you guys. But as long as Dave is out to show support for Dave and the soundboard that I miss, I'm going to impersonate Cooper Mays for 4 Downs because Cooper Mays' voice is the one that we use to tee us off for every down when we play 4 Downs. So first, Cooper Mays here. Like and subscribe. Well, thank you, Coop. I really appreciate that. Coop here. First down. All right, first down from Cooper Mays. The first game that Tennessee is projected to lose. No shock to any of you guys. Georgia. Tennessee has a 40.7% chance of beating Georgia this year. Here's the crazy part. That's actually pretty high, all things considered. A 40.7 chance of beating Georgia this year is, that's incredible, guys. That's actually kind of a really wild stat. A 40.7% chance of beating Georgia is, I didn't see it being that high. And just for context, last year when they faced Georgia, they had a 20.6% chance. That shows a huge level of improvement. They had a 40% chance of beating Alabama last year. Alabama, they have almost as good of a chance of beating Georgia at home this year as they had of beating Alabama at home last year going into the season. That's a really good sign for Tennessee. And now if you want to say, well, Tennessee was at home, Tennessee's at home against Georgia this year. They were on the road against Georgia last year. That's fair. I think that's a very fair, reasonable point to make. But 2 years ago when they were in Knoxville, they had a 22.3% FPI chance to beat Georgia at the beginning of the year. They're up to 40. That is a huge sign of improvement, guys. That's a huge sign of improvement. And I think that Tennessee, the fact that they are given a 40% chance, should be very excited about that. Cooper Mays here. Second down. All right. Second down. The next one, again, no surprise to anybody, Alabama. Their lowest chance to win any game this year, 31.6%. 31.6% being their lowest game, guys, is actually a pretty good sign. They've always been in the low 20s or even high teens in the Josh Heupel era and the Jeremy Pruitt era with the FPI when it came to the projections of how many games they were going to win. 31.6% is actually a very good sign for them. I've told you guys for a while I would write off the Alabama game. That is easily their toughest game. The FPI agrees with me because that's the lowest chance Tennessee has of winning a game this year. I would venture to say that Alabama. Look, if Tennessee beats Georgia, I wouldn't expend a lot of energy trying to beat Alabama. I wouldn't. I'd rather focus on beating Kentucky the next week, honestly. Kentucky and Oklahoma are the two games after Alabama. I'll get to those, but I wouldn't venture. I would actually think the energy that it would take to beat Alabama could be concerning because there were other bigger, more winnable games. Alabama's going to be really good this year, the guys. I've talked about this for a while. Last year, Kalen DeBoer just started Jalen Milroe to keep the team together, but that was the worst possible fit for the offense that Kalen DeBoer runs out there. He stayed afloat doing it. Now Jalen Milroe is gone, and now he gets to start his guy, which is Ty Simpson, who is a much better fit for this offense. So I'm very concerned about Alabama this year if I'm an SEC rival, and Tennessee going to Alabama, I just don't see how they beat them. All SEC Center Cooper Mays here. Third down. Thank you, Coop. Okay. On third down, we will say the final game, and it's Tennessee's biggest toss-up game of the year. Florida. Man, how times have returned, right? Florida, Tennessee's trying to make the playoff, compete for a national championship, and it could all come down to that Florida game, the second to last game of the year. Florida's favored to beat them, but Tennessee has a 48.5% chance to beat Florida. That is a complete toss-up. A good sign for Tennessee is it's at the end of the year. It could be good or bad. We don't know. Here's why it could be good. Florida could be quitting on the season by that point. By that point, they will have played at LSU, at Miami, Texas at home, at Texas A&M, Georgia at a neutral site, and at Ole Miss. By the way, guys, they're going to be underdog. The FPI projects them to lose all of those games, every single one I just mentioned. And if that's the case, they will be 4-6 going to play Tennessee. And that's assuming they don't lose at Kentucky or to South Florida at home. Okay. So they could easily be 4-6 or even 3-7 going to play Tennessee. Billy Napier would be fired. They would quit on the season. Tennessee could beat them. Or they got a bowl game to play for. They're excited. They're going to go all out to try to beat Tennessee at home. Or Billy Napier's fired and they rally around the new interim coach just because for momentum, because that happens sometimes. A lot of ways this could go, but it could be good for Tennessee that they play Florida when they do, because they could be so mentally drained from what happened in the season. Fourth down coming up, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume Ford dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All SEC Center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down. What are the biggest toss-ups for Tennessee among the games they are projected to win? I told you guys the 3 biggest toss-ups for them. They are more likely to win. They have higher projections to win any of their games that they are projected to lose than other teams that they're projected to beat have to beat them. So the 3 biggest toss-ups, they're more likely to win based on FPI numbers. They're more likely to win one of the games they're projected to lose than they are to lose one of the games they're projected to win. However, which games are closest? Which games come closest to that? The closest toss-up that they are projected to win is Oklahoma. They have a 73.7% chance of beating Oklahoma. That's at Neyland Stadium. 74.8% chance of winning at Kentucky. 76.6% chance of winning against Arkansas. So from Arkansas to Alabama to Kentucky to Oklahoma, they don't have an 80% chance of winning any game on that 4-game stretch. That's actually one of the easier 4-game stretches in the SEC. We've talked about that before. What are the easier games that they projected to win beyond that? Well, Vanderbilt at 85.2%, Mississippi State at 80.3%, UAB at 98.1%, New Mexico State at 99%, East Tennessee State at 99%. Interestingly enough, Syracuse this week, 88.6%. So Tennessee should be very excited about the state of the FPI schedule and how the season starts. They have a very good chance of being, look, Tennessee could be very much on the table, but we'll see how that goes. But Tennessee is actually looking to be in decent shape with the FPI. We're going to see how that goes. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection of strict standards. Hemp House, chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House, chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. HOOKED for 10% off. When we come back, we're going to talk about the SEC and the 9-game schedule. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook. Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Hello, ma'am. I'm here to look at that plumbing problem.
Oh boy. Yep, you're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell, turn on your notifications. Portions of the program brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. We continue our coverage with What the H, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. And it has a lot to do with the SEC's 9-game schedule. It is time to dive in on that because while I was out last week, that happened, and now I got to talk about it. The SEC is moving to a 9-game schedule in 2026. There are a bunch of debates over who the rivalry should be because the way they'll do this is 3 permanent opponents and then the other 6 on a rotating basis. Now, here's the problem with this, and this is why it's What the H. Greg Sankey didn't do anything to address the other issues that were holding up 9-game schedules to begin with. So how did Tennessee agree to this? How did the SEC agree to this? See, there are 2 big issues with the 9-game schedule that I don't think anybody in the SEC should have agreed to if they were going to do this. There are 2 issues that nobody in the SEC should have agreed to a 9-game schedule without these two things being fixed. One, and this is the big one, and I don't know why this hasn't been addressed. How much more is ESPN paying for this 9-game schedule? Remember this. The SEC right now is locked in a bad deal with ESPN relative to what's going on with their contracting compared to the Big Ten. The SEC has it's locked in a 10-year, $3 billion deal with ESPN. That's $300 million a year. Meanwhile, the Big Ten is in a 7-year, $7 billion deal across 3 networks. So right now, every Big Ten school is bringing in, the Big Ten as a whole is bringing in $1 billion a year. The SEC is bringing in $300 million. You can point out that there are two more schools in the Big Ten. They are still, even those schools who were there on a discount, Oregon and Washington, are bringing in $20 million more per year than every SEC school. That's a whole NIL budget. And in the age of NIL, that money matters. By going to a 9-game conference schedule, the SEC has reduced the total number of games played from 128 to 120 because they're playing each other more. Now, ESPN's still going to make more money off of that because fewer games is not a big deal because you'd rather have more marquee top 25 games than you would Tennessee versus ETSU on SEC Network Plus if you are ESPN. But if the payout's the same no matter what for the SEC schools, you don't want to reduce those 8 games. That's 8 less games in revenue as a whole for your conference. So it's a really big deal to reduce that number of games, honestly. And with that in mind, yeah, I think the SEC should be unhappy about that. And they shouldn't have agreed to this. But then there's a bigger point. And this is one that's not being talked about. The SEC hasn't changed its requirement for one marquee non-conference game a year against a Power 4 school. Think about that for a minute. Indiana, by the way, has to play 9 Big Ten games. You know, the Big Ten's like, oh, we have to play 9 games. You should have to play 9 games too. Ignoring the fact that the SEC after the top 4 is so much tougher than the Big Ten. Beyond that, the Big Ten doesn't require you to play a marquee non-conference game. Indiana didn't play anybody last year non-conference. They had a horrible schedule. They played 2 FCS schools, two Group of 5 schools, and then an FCS school. The SEC is going to require you to play a marquee non-conference game plus your 9 conference games. You just closed the path to a bowl for about 5 mid-tier 6 and 6, 7 and 5 type schools. Now think about this. You're closing that path. That's a key source of revenue for those schools. Particularly something that's needed when you have such a bad deal with ESPN. On top of that, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee showed at least last year, they don't care about schedule strength whatsoever. So when that was in mind, you just increased the toughness of a schedule without any incentive to do so. And I think that's a giant mistake for the SEC because there's more payout for the College Football Playoff too. And the SEC is not going to enjoy the fruits of that labor. This is a huge issue. All of these things are real problems. And it is What the H, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
I'm setting up the poll question now. The SEC should not have gone to a 9-game schedule without more money from ESPN, ending marquee non-conference games, demanding CFP better factors in SOS better, or all of the above. And I'm saying all of the above, okay? Because I say the SEC shouldn't have gone to a 9-game schedule without more money from ESPN, ending marquee non-conference games, demanding CFP factors in strength the schedule better, and all of the. I'm saying all three. All three. They should not They should have demanded all three things be done. How are you going to have non-conference games that are marquee when the college football playoff doesn't value strength of schedule? This is ridiculous by Greg Sankey. This is a huge mistake, and it's a dumb move. And I cannot believe some SEC schools got on board with this. The only saving grace is maybe Greg Sankey knows something we don't. But here's the other part of what this really means. Here's the other part of what this really means, guys. The automatic qualifier model is out for the college football playoff. The biggest reason the SEC did this is the Big Ten wanted it to do the 5+7 model or 5+9 model or 5+11 model for the college football playoff next year. By going to 9 conference games, the automatic qualifier model for the college football playoff, it's done. It's done. It's just going to be the top 5 conference champions and then the next 11 teams or the next 9 teams or the next 7, depending on whether or not it's 12, 14, or 16. What I would do is I would do the 5-9 model, the top 5 conference champs, and then the next 9 teams. And here's how I would do the format. 14-team playoff. The top 2 teams, and I would go top 2 conference champions again. The top 2 conference champions get a first-round bye. The next are seeded 3 to 14 in the first weekend. You get home field advantage if you are the 3 seed, the 4 seed, or the 5 seed. However, this is one of my hot takes. The 6 seed, it would be 3 would play 14. Yeah. The 6 seed, the 7 seed, and the 8 seed and the 9 seed play, or the 7 seed, 8 seed, 9 seed, 10 seed play at neutral locations that are bowls. If you are a 7 to 10 seed, you don't get a home field advantage game. But if you are a 3 to 6 seed, you get home field advantage. So 3 hosts 14, 4 hosts 13, 5 hosts 12, 6 hosts 11, 7 and 10 play at a neutral site, 8 and 9 play at a neutral site, and then in the net and make those one of the two of the bowl games in the playoff. And then the next week, 1 and 2 get to play at home that week. That's how I would do the playoff in a 14-team playoff. But truth of the matter is, this move by Greg Sankey was caving, and Derek is making a great point. Derek says it. The Big Ten is running the show. Let's be honest with ourselves. Greg, a little boy, and that's that. I mean, the Big Ten is running the show. The Big Ten is running the show. The SEC just gave the Big Ten everything it wanted without any concessions from the Big Ten or the other networks or ESPN or anything. That's ridiculous. Greg Sankey blew it with that. The poll question, the SEC shouldn't have gone to a 9-game schedule without more money from ESPN, ending marquee non-conference games, demanding the CFP factors in strength the schedule better, or all of the above. 67% of you say all of the above. 17% say demanding the CFP factors in strength the schedule better. 8% of you say ending marquee non-conference games, and 8% of you say more money from ESPN. I agree with this poll question. All of the above is the most important one. It should have been all of the above. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake alignments, and oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Walk in and say, "Hello, Off the Hook Sports sent you." Off the Hook Sports sent you. QualityTirePros.com. It is time for Hot or Cold, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports daily updates. Facebook.com/Sports Treasures TN. Facebook.com/Sports Treasures TN. And what's Hot or Cold going to be, guys? Well, it's going to be playing off this 9-game SEC schedule. In the SEC's 9-game schedule format coming in 2026, every team will have 3 permanent opponents they play every year and 6 others on a rotating basis. Who will be Tennessee's 3 opponents? That'll be Hot or Cold, brought to you by Sports Treasures. We're going to go down the list of every SEC team, and I will say hot or cold on them as a good opponent, a potentially likely opponent, or cold if they're a bad opponent. So let's go down the list. I think a couple are obvious ones, locks, and I'm going to say let's start with the easiest one because I'll give you the most sure bet of all of Tennessee's rivalries that they will play on a permanent basis, and that most sure bet is Vanderbilt. I'm hot on Vanderbilt being a rivalry. It's an in-state rivalry. Tennessee has played them for a very long time throughout history. Strong possibility they continue to play them annually. Likelihood greater than 70% chance Vanderbilt is an annual game for Tennessee. I'm hot on Vanderbilt. Tennessee's playing them every year. Alabama, third Saturday in October. That's a sacred SEC rivalry. I'm hot on that. The SEC is going to protect that. They're going to play Alabama every year. I'm hot on that one too. All right. Now we go down the list, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Actually, there's two more that I think you guys need to know about that are debated. Kentucky. That's the second oldest played game in the SEC. I'm hot on that as a possibility. Not as a good choice, but as a possibility. Now, I think a couple of really old SEC games are going to have to go by the wayside. Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama, Mississippi State are two of them. But Kentucky's a possibility for Tennessee. I'm hot on that as a possibility, given the fact that Tennessee's played them so much. It's the second most played game in the SEC. Florida. I'm hot on that possibility too. Tennessee and Florida, the SEC, there is a bit of a tradition there wanting to protect it, but honestly, it wouldn't be crazy to see it go. Now, let's go down the list of every other school. Arkansas, I'm cold on that. I can tell you right now, straight up, Tennessee's not going to play Arkansas annually every year. It's not happening. Auburn, I'm cold on that. Although Auburn was a traditional rivalry for Tennessee from 1956 to 1991, the real issue with Auburn is the fact that the Tigers, and this is a big deal, guys, they have to play Alabama and Georgia every year. Georgia's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Alabama's the Iron Bowl. They're not going to put Tennessee on that schedule, too. They're going to give Auburn an easy game. I think Auburn might get Vanderbilt on top of that. Georgia has to play Auburn and South Carolina and Florida. Those are three marquee games. I don't think Georgia can lose any of those rivalries, honestly. So I think with that in mind, no, I'm going on Tennessee. They're not going to play Georgia every year. It's not happening. LSU. No, not happening. Tennessee, LSU won't be an annual rivalry. Mississippi State. Now, interestingly enough, historically, Tennessee and Mississippi State did have a rivalry. They actually played every year in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and actually I think that carried into the 60s, 70s, and 80s too at different times. But no, cold on it. They won't play Mississippi State every year. Not happening. Missouri, cold on it. Missouri has traditional Big 12 ties with former Big 12 teams now in there. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Texas, and then, of course, Arkansas. I'm cold on Missouri. Ole Miss. I'm sorry. I forgot one. Oklahoma. Cold on it. Not going to play Oklahoma every year. Now, there's four more that I'm going to do, and it's Hot or Cold brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures, and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates, facebook.com/sportstreasurestn. And I'm going to split the baby with these, but they're kind of obvious over who Tennessee could play annually. First, a quick message from Sports Treasures.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
All right, Texas, cold, not happening. Texas A&M, cold, not happening. But two others on the list that they could play annually. Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss is going to draw probably Mississippi State, and I would think maybe LSU or maybe Vanderbilt. But Ole Miss could get Tennessee. Tennessee and Ole Miss played annually just like they did with Auburn from like 56 to 91, I think. That's a bit of an older rivalry, and if Tennessee can't draw Kentucky, if they're just trying to fix things out and give a team a rivalry, they might give Tennessee Ole Miss. And then another one that could be Tennessee's annual rivalry, guys, do not sleep on the possibility of South Carolina. Not that South Carolina is a big rivalry or anything like that, but the SEC has to fill out these rivalries somehow. And South Carolina might be one that they preserve or that they start or bring back. We'll see how it goes, but watch out for South Carolina. Here's my rankings on the obvious ones. Vanderbilt's number 1. Alabama's number 2. Florida's number 3. Kentucky's number 4. South Carolina's number 5. Ole Miss is number 6. Those are the only 6 teams Tennessee's going to be able to play on an annual basis. There's nobody else. There's nobody else that's a candidate for that list. It's those 6 teams. Now, Alabama and Vanderbilt are locks. So, assuming Alabama and Vanderbilt are locks, Alabama and Vandy are locks. who should be the Vols' third permanent SEC rival? And we're going to say Florida, Kentucky. Let's go down the list again. Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, or somebody else. Actually, no, I'll just go ahead and get or somebody else. And you guys vote on that. Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, or somebody else. Assuming Alabama and Vandy are locks, who should be the Vols' third permanent SEC rival? Again, makes sense to be Kentucky, but something tells me the SEC is not going to want to give Tennessee Kentucky and give them that easy of a road with Vanderbilt, Kentucky every year on a permanent basis. Now, Alabama, that's kind of intriguing because Alabama could draw Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU, but I think Alabama is going to draw Auburn, Tennessee, and they're going to give them an easy opponent too, i.e. maybe Kentucky, maybe LSU or Mississippi State, because they have played Mississippi State for so long. But we're going to have to see how that all plays out. I do think there is a very strong possibility, and I mean a very strong possibility, that Alabama gets the most brutal draw of this. So, again, we don't know for sure yet. Lots to still work out. But the three permanent rivals, if you're going to do the 9-game schedule, this is probably the best way to do it. I would agree with that. So looking at for every SEC team, and I would encourage you guys to go look at Saturday Down South. Saturday Down South is calling Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee for Alabama, Texas A&M, and Missouri for Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss for Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and LSU for Florida, Auburn, Florida, and South Carolina for Georgia, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State for Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma for LSU, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Kentucky for Mississippi State, Arkansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina for Missouri, LSU, Missouri, Texas for Oklahoma, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Auburn for Ole Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky for South Carolina, and Alabama, Vanderbilt, and Florida for Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M for Texas, Arkansas, Texas, Ole Miss for Texas A&M, and Tennessee, Kentucky, and South Carolina for Vanderbilt. I'm going to tell you guys something that's a bit of a hot take. I don't really think it's important that over a 4-year span, you get to play every SEC school twice. I think it's more important to preserve rivalries, and I think they should have done a 5-4 model. Preserve 5 rivalries and then 4 other teams on a rotational basis. I would rather that, because let's just go over to Arkansas real quick. I still want to see the battle for the Golden Boot when Arkansas plays LSU, and I want to see them play Texas, Texas A&M, Missouri, and Oklahoma. I do. I think all those are great type of potential. They're great historical rivalry games or potential rivalry games going forward. I don't really love this 3-6 model. I really don't. Now, as far as the poll question goes, you guys, it's up. Assuming Alabama and Vandy are locks, who should be the Vols' third permanent SEC rival? 64% of you say Kentucky, 32% say Florida, 4% say South Carolina. Nobody is saying somebody else. So it looks like you guys all want to see Tennessee to play Kentucky. Are you going for that for tradition, or are you going for that because Kentucky's the easier team long term? I do think a lot of Tennessee fans have given up caring about the Florida rivalry the way they used to. They're so tired of losing to them in just crazy ways, and it just keeps happening. I think they've really and truly given up on Florida as a rivalry that they really care about now. I just think it's kind of one of those frustrating things for them. But look, I think a lot of people do still care about the rivalry. We're going to have to see how it plays out. So we don't know yet, but time will tell. We're going to find out the permanent rivalries soon enough. I'm myself probably leaning Florida because I just can't, as much as I love the history of it, I can't justify Tennessee getting to play Vanderbilt, Kentucky every year. I don't think that's fair. Portions of the program are brought to you by the UPS Store Haun Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated, 10629 Haun Valley Road. We are brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com. Broadcast live every day, every weekday, 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. When we come back, we're going to discuss Kamari Blair flipping to Tennessee over the weekend. That'll be Bank on It. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months. and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Hello, ma'am. I'm here to look at that plumbing problem.
Oh boy. Yep. You're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button. Tennessee with a big recruiting win over the weekend. They've been taking a couple of L's, missing out on a 5-star running back and missing out on a 5-star offensive lineman. However, they flipped a key commitment on the offensive line recently, one that is huge for them going forward. Kamari Blair had committed to South Carolina back in June of this year. He is a 4-star on 247 Sports Composite, a 3-star on regular 247 Sports, but a 4-star on Rivals and on 3. Blair is an in-state player coming out of Kirkwood High School in Clarksville, Tennessee. Committed to the flip from South Carolina to Tennessee and committed over Virginia, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and Ole Miss. How big of a deal is Kamari Blair for Tennessee long term? Well, that is the question that's a little bit tricky. Because Kamari Blair, again, who stands at 6'6", roughly 280, we don't necessarily know how valuable he is as a fringe 4-star. However, Tennessee has the number 11 ranked recruiting class right now with him. They have 23 commitments, 2 5-stars, and 11 4-stars. It's difficult exactly to know how much value Kamari Blair is going to bring to this point. Part of this we'll learn with how Josh Height will handle and Glenn Ellerby handles offensive linemen this year, because this year is going to be the first year that those two have to coach offensive linemen that signed with Tennessee out of high school under that staff, under this current staff. And my guess is it'll be David Sanders Jr., the freshman phenom, and then William Satterwhite, but we will see. Max Anderson and Gage Ginther are involved in that too. Kamari Blair, though, given who was recruiting him, you do have to wonder, is he just a body or does he add value that is legit? Because we don't know yet. However, I'm going to say this. Bank on it. And it's brought to you by Commercial Bank member FDIC, Life Made Better. Bank on it. Kamari Blair will be a regular rotational player in Tennessee's system. Tennessee, however, Tennessee, and this is bank on it, only landed Kamari Blair because Darius Gray committed to South Carolina, the 5-star offensive lineman they were targeting. Darius Gray committed, and then Kamari Blair flipped. So it looks like Tennessee settled for Kamari Blair. So this is Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Remember, FDIC, life made better. Tennessee settled for Kamari Blair.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
The biggest reason I think Kamari Blair was a settle moment. I think Kamari Blair is an in-state guy, probably wanted to go to Tennessee. I think the reason he committed to South Carolina is Tennessee wasn't targeting him that heavily. I think they weren't targeting him that heavily because they wanted Darius Gray. I think that with Darius Gray committing to South Carolina, I think that Tennessee then decided, okay, we really do want Kamari Blair because that's our best chance to be successful. I think that succession happened, and then they went hard after Kamari Blair when they knew Darius Gray was going to commit. I think they knew Darius Gray was going to commit to South Carolina before he actually publicly committed. So that's when I think they went a little harder after Kamari Blair. And I think that because of that, it's how they were able to land Kamari Blair and sell that they flipped a 4-star from Tennessee. But I don't think this is actually good news for Tennessee because they lost Darius Gray. Now, this is where Glenn Ellerby and Josh Heupel come into play. We haven't seen how well they develop offensive linemen yet out of high school because they haven't really started anybody they signed out of high school yet. So, again, we'll see more of this on the Vols this year with particularly William Satterwhite. Kamari Blair could develop into a very good player. And maybe development is all you need when you have a real deep offensive line. So with that in mind, and see, Sam, you're saying that they didn't settle. Blair said he always wanted to come to Tennessee, but that actually leads me to believe they did settle because I think they weren't recruiting Kamari Blair that hard. And then they did start recruiting him that hard once they realized they were losing ground on Darius Gray. That's because of how that whole situation went. And when you combine Darius Gray with Savion Hitter, who they also missed out on, that's a really big deal, guys. And so I don't think last week was a big recruiting win for Tennessee just because they flipped a guy from South Carolina. So I can't see that. Now, if South Carolina falls apart this year, which I don't know if they will with Lenore Sellers at quarterback, he is that good, we might be having a different story. But the success they had with Lenore Sellers down the stretch of last year, look, at some point, I've got to reset my expectations and what I thought about Shane Beamer as a coach, because as goofy as I think he is, he keeps finding these really elite players that can carry him to an above average season. And then that above average season allows him to recruit enough talent to get better as the years go on. This, for the record, is how he flipped Mazeo Bennett from Tennessee back in 2022. Spencer Rattler had an unbelievable finish to his 2022 season. He was probably cheating thanks to Connor Stallions. But nonetheless, that involved them beating Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weeks. And I think doing that allowed South Carolina to flip Mazeo Bennett from Tennessee. Now, Adam, you are right about this for Savion Hitter. He was never going to be worth the money. And what was Hitter going to accomplish that Sampson didn't for a lot more money? I agree with you on that. I don't think you opened the checkbook for running backs anyway. So I don't think it's a big deal that Tennessee didn't land Hitter. I didn't think they would. But losing out on Darius Gray and then settling for Kamari Blair is a different story. The one saving grace, though, as we talk about it, there is potential for Glenn Ellerby's player development. It does seem to somewhat be there, even though they haven't started a guy that they assigned out of high school yet. But it also seems true, and this is a big deal now, that guys, it does come across as if Blair might give a little bit more for Tennessee, being from Tennessee. He wanted to go to Tennessee so badly. He clearly flipped very quickly when Tennessee offered him a little more heavily. And with that in mind, I wouldn't freak out just yet about the trade-off of Blair versus Gray. I would just say that we got to acknowledge that Tennessee settled with Kamari Blair. I don't think there's any debate that they actually settled with Kamari Blair. And so, again, how this all plays out, we'll see. Tennessee right now for its 2026 recruiting class has 23 commitments. That includes 11 4-stars, 2 5-stars, 10 3-stars. Culture is a big deal on this. We can talk about it. I know you can think it's overrated, but keeping guys together is somewhat of a big deal. So we'll see how that all plays out. At least they withstood some of the losses. And I know a lot of you guys are talking about it's a 4-star versus 5-star, but guys, Kamari Blair is not. He's a fringe 4-star. He's a 3-star on regular 247 sports. So again, a fringe 4-star is different from a full-on 4-star. And I know Tennessee's having success with overachievers, undervalued kid. I wouldn't say undervalued players who turn it out to work out. That is true. But again, those stand out a lot. Who doesn't stand out are all the guys who aren't highly touted, who don't end up working out. Coming from Clarksville, I will say, for those asking, I wouldn't say Clarksville kids or Montgomery County kids are overrated get overvalued the way Nashville does. I don't think the 247 sports and the recruiting sites have too huge of a presence there, even though it's technically in the Nashville greater metro area. You could consider it that. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I do think Tennessee settled on Kamari Blair because of what happened with Darius Gray, and that's probably not the best sign going forward. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications, tell a friend. When we come back, it'll be This Day in Tennessee Sports History and Stat of the Day.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume 4 dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications, tell a friend. It is time for This Day in Tennessee Sports History, and it is a very happy birthday to, let me just pull it up real quick, because I put the wrong date in, so I just have to pull that out. But it is excuse me, guys, I got something totally wrong. I got my birthdays wrong. You guys need to forgive me on that. Totally got my birthdays wrong. I will save that birthday for tomorrow. But on this day in Tennessee sports history, Grantland Rice, Fred Russell, and Francis Wallace all came out and picked Tennessee to win the national title in 1951. These are notable, historic writers in college football history, and they all came out and picked Tennessee to win the national title in 1951 after Tennessee started the year before winning their final 10 games to go from 1-1 to 11-1, and had the polls been done at the end of the season instead of before the bowl games, Tennessee would have finished number 1 that year. So all 3 major columnists came out on this day and picked Tennessee to win the national title. Tennessee started things off beating Mississippi State on September the 29th, and they did run the table during the regular season and win the national title, although they did lose to Maryland in the Sugar Bowl. As I've talked about before, bowl games were much more exhibitions during that time. This day in Tennessee football history, brought to you by Joe Newberg Collision. For nearly 50 years, Newberg Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewbergCollision.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newberg's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newberg Collision Center.
Stat of the day is this. Tennessee, Saturday will mark Tennessee's 3rd time ever opening the season in Atlanta. The last 2 times, their head coach got fired. They opened the season in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome against NC State on a Friday in 2012. They won that game. Derek Dooley got fired later in the year. They then opened the 2017 season against Georgia Tech in Atlanta at the newly constructed Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Won that game 42-41 in double overtime. Had no business winning that game. Butch Jones got fired later that year. They went 5-7 and 4-8 those 2 respective years. Does that mean Josh Heupel gets fired this year and Tennessee has a losing record? I don't necessarily think so, but I do think Tennessee, at the same time, and I want to point this out, will have a lot more. I think Tennessee has a break in the pattern this time because of the fact that they don't play on a Thursday or a Saturday. They don't play on a Monday or a Friday. They play on a standard Saturday. However, that's another stat for you that you're not going to like, which is this. And it's a big one that we haven't talked about a lot. Tennessee hasn't won a game in Atlanta on a Saturday since the 1998 SEC championship game. That includes 3 SEC title losses in 2001, 2004, and 2007. They've also lost 3 Peach Bowl games during that time as well. Now, of course, the Peach Bowl is not designated on a Saturday. It's usually designated on New Year's Eve. To be fair, it's designated on New Year's Eve. And so when you take that into account, Tennessee, like the Peach Bowl that they lost to Maryland was on a Tuesday. The Peach Bowl that they lost to Clemson was on a Friday. And then the Peach Bowl that they lost to Virginia Tech back in 2009, that was December 31st, 2009. That one was on a Thursday. Still, 0-3 on Saturdays in Atlanta. This will be their first Saturday game in Atlanta since the 2007 SEC title game, which they lost to LSU. Stat of the day brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. Link is in the chat. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live every weekday at 10 a.m. from Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in today. You have a great rest of your day. I will be back on tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern as we begin our preview for Syracuse after Josh Heupel will speak to the media today. You guys have a great rest of your day with Caleb Calhoun. This has been a presentation of Off the